Well, folks, it may be hard to believe that the critics have placed themselves in a place of irrelevancy even more than they already were, yet that is where we are today. Yes, they have ranked Peter Pan and Wendy as being a better movie than the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Yes, the Rotten Tomatoes score for critics is higher for Peter Pan than it is for Mario, and yet the audience scores could not be more different. Simultaneous to that, well, the financial results are as stark as they can possibly be. We're going to get into it right now. Well, folks, it's a beautiful day out there, and I hope you're all having a lovely time. Of course, we're here once again to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve. In this case, explain to you the craziness of the critics. They just seem to keep stepping in it over and over again. Now, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about that notification bell. Don't forget that we covet your comments, so drop one down below. The other day, we did the very first members live stream, an exclusive live stream just for members of the channel, and one of the topics we covered was Peter Pan and Wendy. Now, for those of you who are not aware of this movie, it's a Disney Plus film, but it was not always specifically known to be Disney Plus. Perhaps at one point we thought, back when it was announced to be in development years and years ago, that it may be coming to the big screen. It has all the gravitas of a movie that could be going to movie theaters, and it has apparently a budget to boot. And so that's one thing that I would like to bring to all of your attention. We'll go into what we discussed on the members live stream shortly, but there's been some new information that's been circulating. And so the rumor is, and this I think is starting to pan out, no pun intended, that Peter Pan and Wendy, a Disney Plus show that has no means by which to accrue financial profit. I mean, it's on Disney Plus. It's on a streaming service. The only thing it can do is increase subscribers, I suppose. But that film, apparently, according to sources that we have, it's being said that it had a $150 million budget. Let me say it again, $150 million budget for a film that has a grand total of a 20% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Even if the critics give it a score higher than Mario, perhaps they don't know what they're doing. But 20% audience score, that seems to indicate that fans and just passerbys are not going to be watching this film on Disney Plus at all. Maybe it'll manage to make its way onto Nielsen, maybe it won't. But oh my gosh, what a gargantuan amount of money to waste on such a colossal failure. $150 million and you get nothing. You get nothing. Just remember, folks, Expedition Everest at Walt Disney World, the huge roller coaster in Animal Kingdom, one of the big draws for the park, cost only $100 million to make, and it's been running constantly for 20 years, drawing in crowds, drawing in people to come to the park. Peter Pan and Wendy cost more than that, and it's not doing a thing. Nothing. You get nothing. Well, it's not only doing that, but it's also exposing the critics dramatically. Because once again, the critics apparently like this movie better than Mario. Now, I'm going to have some comments after we watch the clip from the members live stream. Most of you out there did not get a chance to see this, although we did have more than 100 people in the members live stream. We also know that these videos circulate out there into the tens of thousands. So we want all of you to get to enjoy what we talked about exclusively Saturday. Do consider, though, that if you would like to get exclusive content and get it early, perhaps consider becoming a member. It is the price of a soda, and then you get to see all of this stuff live when it happens. And, well, there were, in the 2 hours plus we ran that live stream, there was a lot more content than what we're going to get now. But join me, Lorne, and Jonas. We'll have a conversation, and then after that, I'll come back with a few more thoughts on this topic. You're not going to want to miss any of it. The critics, yet again, being exposed by a movie, by a major movie. So, Lauren, any idea which movie may be exposing the critics this time?
Well, you've kind of given me an advantage because you already told me what we're talking about, but I will say it
No.
involves a lot of pixie dust.
True that. All right, folks. So the movie that is exposing them just happens to be a Disney Plus movie. Peter Pan and Wendy is actually exposing the mainstream critics, the access media, in a big way, and we're about to show you exactly how it is that the critics, yet again, following the Mario movie debacle they just went through, well, they're just being embarrassed all over. So, with that said, here we go. We're diving in to the content about Peter Pan. Let's drop us down, and here we go. You may have thought that the critics had had enough. You may have thought that they were just done for, over it. Perhaps the Mario movie had proven that they were completely and totally irrelevant and they needed to step out of the game. But folks, it's not enough. They know they want more. They need to be affirmed even farther as being totally and fully out of step with the mainstream, with audiences everywhere. And look no further than what is happening right now over on Rotten Tomatoes, that scurrilous website, the place that aggregates scores in such a way to help all the big corporations. That's what I think, at least. Well, it turns out that not even Rotten Tomatoes can save the car wreck that is Peter Pan and Wendy. Pixie dust is not doing enough here, but take a look at this. You're not going to believe it. 67% approval, 67% positive reviews for this terrible movie out of the critics. And yet, 20%, only 20% and dropping of audience members who have seen this movie wish to see it again or approve it for others to see it. They don't recommend it. This is yet another example of critics being completely out of line, completely out of step with what the actual audiences want to see. Now, to demonstrate just how fully and how embarrassingly this is going for them, let me show you this. What is the current score for the Super Mario Bros. Movie, despite Rotten Tomatoes and others doing everything they can to find every single positive review out there in every nook and cranny to try to get it to be fresh? It's still at 59%. Yes, folks, critics believe that the Super Mario Bros. Movie is less quality, less entertaining, less in every way than Peter Pan and Wendy, a film that audiences do not want to see. And yet again, look at this. It's the inverse of the Peter Pan and Wendy situation. In this case, critics, who had, by the way, tanked this movie early on to far lower than it currently stands, they're at 59%, but audiences love it at 96%. And that was enough egg on the faces of all the access and legacy media types, but no, they're back for more. This time, saying, you know what, this is at least decent. It's better than Mario, while audiences say, blech, they do not want to fool with this at all. And in fact, if we look at the actual reviews of this, take a look at this one. After all the publicity, I decided to give this movie a try, even if my expectations were not very high. We take the kids and we expected to have some fun as usual. I'm glad my expectations weren't high, because otherwise I would have felt really disappointed. We've got this. In another language, I can still understand what this means. Horrible. Decepcionante. I'm going to assume that's Portuguese. This is a farce, not even a good one. If you've seen parodies of the old legends, you've seen better. Disney really needs a new tune to play. How can this be, folks? How can it be that audiences are turning away from this movie? What do the critics say about it? How can they possibly be finding something about it that's good? Well, we can see the list right here, and we can see that these critics, well, they're a little bit divided, but yet at the same time, they are rating Peter Pan and Wendy with a 20% audience score higher than Mario. And remember that Mario, the Mario movie, is likely to become the single most lucrative animated feature film of all time. But no, Peter Pan and Wendy, with all those lost girls instead of lost boys, it's better than Mario, according to the critics. Lauren, is it possible for critics to fall any further, any lower in terms of their standing with people using them for real determinations as to which movies to see?
Yes, absolutely.
How could they go lower, Lauren?
Never underestimate their ability to get lower. At this point, I think they're probably on the level of pond scum. They haven't quite reached the level of bacterial infection or virus yet.
I love it. So they're sort of at a plankton level. Is that where they're at right now?
Well, I think what this really shows you is just the level of contempt that they do have for the audience. This shows just what level of disdain they have for the average moviegoer. They think we're actually going to buy this. That's ridiculous.
Make sure to catch The Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.
Yes, and now this is a Disney Plus show. Nevertheless, Disney has been trying to put out original and remake films, real films, onto Disney Plus in an effort to try to keep people on the platform. They want to compete with Netflix, right? Well, there's just one problem. Audiences seem not to enjoy this sort of thing. But let's take a look at what the critics say. This one coming to us from Superhero Hype by Luke Thompson, Peter Pan and Wendy review, The Green Knight Rises. And I want people to notice, too, that when we're reading some of these reviews, some of these smaller sites, they're looking for opportunities to be re-invited or invited for the first time to go to those premieres, to get early access, etc. Now, I'm not saying that Luke Thompson and superherohype.com are of that variety, but let's see what they say, and then we'll compare this to audiences. Peter Pan being one of the best known public domain fantasy stories out there, alongside Alice in Wonderland and The Wizard of Oz, rarely seems absent from movie screens for long. Everyone has a new take or a different spin on the flying boy who never grows up, in most cases simply because the name recognition is too tempting to pass up. P.J. Hogan's 2003 live-action version is probably the best. Okay. Largely because it takes the radical step of being faithful to the source. Disney's animated version isn't one of their best, mainly because Peter himself, while portrayed as a hero, comes off as a pretty obnoxious. When Chippendale Rescue Rangers made him the villain, it didn't seem too out of place. Well, that's funny because audiences also disagreed with that. They largely did not watch Chippendale Rescue Rangers. It barely made a blip on the Nielsen ratings. David Lowery's new Peter Pan and Wendy is ostensibly a live-action remake of said animated version. And while it eliminates most of the songs, that sounds fun, it begins the same, with teenage Wendy and her brothers Michael and John whisked away to the immortality-giving fantasy realm called Neverland. By surprise visitor Peter Pan and his fairy companion Tinkerbell. Somewhere along the way, though, the story takes a big swerve and starts examining its own story tropes. Young kids may not find this as interesting as their parents might, and probably not if their parents are of a certain political belief, aka 80% of you out there, because only 20% liked it. But Lowry's definitely not playing it safe. Note that his filmography would suggest, or not that his filmography would ever suggest that he might. It goes on and on and on and on and on, and eventually gives it that positive score that lifts this thing up to having something better than the Mario movie. And that's sort of how this goes. They extol the praises for children's content, these critics do. But rarely do they take into account that perhaps families and children do not want to see the same things that they do. And if we look at the top critics, well, this at least shows us that there are some critics out there, some who have seen it, who are willing to be slightly honest. Take, for example, Kevin Mayer of The Times out of the UK, a bizarrely disjointed and patchy experience that lurches forward in clunky set pieces, consistently foregrounding surface details that we have little impact on the brittle underlying narrative. Yet still, it is hard to ignore that somehow, some way, they in fact did manage to give Peter Pan and Wendy, a movie that audiences don't want to see, a higher score than the Super Mario Brothers movie, a film that everyone wants to see, apparently. Lauren, have you had a chance to see the Super Mario Brothers movie?
Yeah, I went and saw it when I was down in Florida with the friends and family that I was going with.
And what is your take on that movie? Do you see why critics apparently dislike it so much that they would rate it lower than a Disney Plus, Disney Channel special Peter Pan?
So I'm going to have to give a little caveat here because
Caveat away.
We were in a theater that my son was very impressed by because it had reclining seats and a little button that he could call somebody to order food for. So I had people walking back and forth in front of me quite a bit while I was watching the movie. So I missed some bits. I'm guessing here, but my take on the situation is that the critics, they see video game entertainment as lowbrow. I think it's not something that they necessarily probably experienced in their own lives and probably don't understand. I think you saw that in some of the critic reviews where they're saying none of this makes sense. Well, of course it doesn't make sense to you. I'm going to use one of their phrases. It's not made for you. And so I think that has an awful lot to do with it.
Well, let me ask you this, Lauren, because this is interesting to me. So the critics, at least, to some degree, they like this Peter Pan and Wendy movie better than the Mario Brothers movie. That's what the score is showing right now on Rotten Tomatoes. Clearly, the audiences disagree. But if you are reviewing a piece of material, does it not make sense that perhaps you would review the material from the mindset of the consumer to which it is aimed? For example, let's say that you are dramatically allergic to pasta. Perhaps you should not be the pasta critic then who goes in to taste test the linguine. Maybe you're not the lasagna guy at that point if you have an allergy and you just can't stand to eat hometown Italian cooking. So why are we sending these highbrow, or at least they think they're highbrow critics, in to review children's fare? And does it not create the system where now, like with Peter Pan and Wendy, this is sort of like Italian restaurants who say, you know what? Let's not serve our audience the pasta that they want and that they love from our restaurant because the critics have that allergy. They're deathly afraid of our pasta. So therefore, only give them the eggplant that goes in the Parmesan. What do you think?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One is that I think most critics would like to be writers or authors. And so they're aspiring to write some great piece of prose that will be lauded by other people. And so they put a lot of stock in the idea that they are intellectuals. It's sort of the ivory tower syndrome. You run into the same thing an awful lot in IT, which is my background. There comes a point at which you're in what amounts to a specialized field, and it gets real easy to start thinking that you're more intelligent than everybody else because you understand this thing that only a niche of society does. And when you start believing that, you start getting awful condescending towards the people that are trying to consume whatever it is that you're producing. And that can lead to a lot of issues. So I think when you're surrounded by other people that are in that same kind of an echo chamber, it gets hard to remain humble. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when you're in that ivory tower, you also think that it's your job to bring culture and enlightenment to the masses, those same masses that you have contempt for. And so, like you said, this is sort of like having somebody who sees themselves as maybe a paternal figure, making sure you eat your vegetables.
Yes. Now, but do you not feel that, and Jonas, you've got a thought on this one?
I was just wondering, is there pineapple in this as well in this
in this metaphor we've created?
Lasagna and Gouda and all that?
Well, only for the most exquisite Italian restaurants. And apparently the exquisite items that come to us in some of this children's content that Disney is attempting to create includes swapping all of your demographics into something quote unquote more modern. Jonas, do you think, while you've got a moment, do you think that perhaps these critics are beginning to realize just how irrelevant they are when they look at the market results, the audience results? And then on top of that, what we've seen in the past is that when critics are so out of line with the market and with the audience, the correction doesn't come to say we should all get better in tuned with the people, but rather we tend to see these companies attempt to hide that there's a disconnect. We've seen that many times.
I would like to make another cartoon reference here. Principal
Please
Skinner,
do.
of course, saying, am I
Steamed
wrong?
hams.
No, it is the children who are wrong.
That is exactly how the critics feel. Lauren, what do you think?
I think I think Lauren's right on the money, though. It's like Finding Forrester. The guy that F. Murray Abraham plays in that film is a failed writer that refuses to believe that Jamal Wallace could actually be this talented, and refuses to believe that he could have any connection to Forrester, Sean Connery's character, because he was put down in a way that he didn't want to be, and he became a private school literature teacher. I think that it's the same thing with critics. I like talking about movies, and I want to be known as a person who talks about movies. A lot of people get into writing either through the love of literature or the love of journalism. And I got to say, critiquing movies, unless that's really what you want, unless you're Leonard Maltin, that's probably not where you want to make your bones for a lot of these people.
And if you're worse at it, you get stuck with reviewing video games.
Yeah, and my wife made a really insightful comment. She makes insightful comments all the time.
I was going to say, don't say that as if it's a rare occurrence. We all know she's your better half.
But I was talking. She is absolutely my better half, and the best decision I ever made was realizing that, hey, I got one here that I need to hold on to. So, but we were talking about the rut that the Disney company is in, and she doesn't talk about box office figures the way we do. I had to couch it in terms of, okay, Guardians is tracking at 130, which is abysmal, and then Little Mermaid is tracking at 70 to 80 for their opening weekend. Horrible. And she said, and I said, they're just making the same thing over and over again. And she said, that's all that they're doing anyways. There are no new stories being told. There haven't been new stories being told for thousands of years because we just keep telling the same thing over and over and over again. And it's only just new to the people who are seeing it now. Critics have an extra problem in that they don't realize that they need to see a new thing, that they're wanting to see a new thing, and that there is nothing new. And they're overexposed to content to the point they've become jaded, and they don't appreciate what they have. And they want to elevate it with their writing and their flowery prose, especially the some of the horrible allusions that I saw for the Super Mario Brothers movie, making references. I think, Pro, you said it, somebody made a reference to an actor that was born in the 1800s in one of their critical reviews of the Mario Brothers movie.
Yes, I do remember that. It was very ridiculous. You could tell automatically this is not the kind of person who should be reviewing a plucky plumber in CGI. So that was our discussion on Peter Pan and Wendy during the members live stream, looking at the critics and how they have completely failed yet again to realize that the market is going in a different direction. Now, perhaps you could say, well, the critics, they get their own opinion and maybe they want to elevate entertainment. But given that this movie seems to be just universally disliked by almost everybody who sees it, no, I'm not going for that one. Now, what I do want to bring to our attention is a little bit of a controversy that has come about since we recorded that. And the controversy has to do with the Tiger Lily character in the movie. Let's get into this by ScreenRant. Shannon Michelson covering this one. In Peter Pan and Wendy, Tiger Lily sometimes speaks English, but mostly speaks another language, part of the film's major revamp of the character. Disney's live-action Peter Pan and Wendy makes major updates to Tiger Lily, including her speaking in a different language from other characters for most of the film. J.M. Barrie's original Peter Pan and Wendy play and novel have long been criticized for their portrayal of Native Americans, although not pirates, apparently. Disney's 1953 Peter Pan film faced the same criticism, particularly for the song What Made the Red Man Red. When faced with making a live-action adaptation, Disney knew they needed to do something different with Tiger Lily. Here's where they're going to get in trouble, though. Let's read along. Peter Pan and Wendy's director David Lowery and co-writer Toby Halbrooks ensured their Tiger Lily would not be a racist stereotype or damsel in distress. Don't you love that a damsel in distress is on the same level as a... Never mind. Let's just read. She plays a major role in helping Peter, Wendy, and the Lost Boys. When it comes to how she speaks and dresses, she's perhaps the most accurate portrayal of Native Americans in a Peter Pan adaptation. Tiger Lily does have a few English lines, but she mostly speaks a different language, with her lines translated through subtitles. In Peter Pan and Wendy, Tiger Lily is speaking the Cree language. Alyssa Wapatanik, who plays Tiger Lily, is a member of the Big Stone Cree First Nation in Canada. She worked with the filmmakers to craft the character of Tiger Lily and incorporate her own Cree heritage. Here's where the issue comes in, folks. The entire premise behind this is that in the original story, that these Native Americans are no group in particular, and Disney has struggled very much to make sure that they are simply the Neverland tribe. They did this because as soon as you identify this with a particular group, then you associate this with being real Native Americans, and that was never the desire of the writers or the original vision of Peter Pan. It's the same thing with pirates. Captain Hook is not supposed to be a real pirate, and these Native Americans are not supposed to be real Native Americans. The mermaids are not supposed to be real mermaids. Although all of these characters probably have some connection with historical ideas. Of course, the mermaids are not real, but they're something that was invented historically. But all of these characters are supposed to have some sort of identifier in history, but they're not supposed to be specifically part of history. And so, whereas you may have thought that this language was something made up for the movie, oh no, it is Cree, in fact, and that I believe is the very first time we have ever put this onto a real tribe, onto a real culture. And now that culture is transported into Neverland, where in fact this is supposed to be the part of a child's imagination, right? Children are supposed to imagine that they lived at a time when pirates existed, or that they lived at a time when the stereotypical Native American settings were visible. And it's supposed to be the imagination of 1800s and perhaps early 1900s children in London. That's the whole idea. But because we're so crazy now children in London are dreaming of characters who speak Canadian first citizen Native American tribe languages and cultures. It makes no sense. So the harder these writers try to put this Peter Pan thing, into a place where it's not at all offensive, the more they stumble into offense in reality. The truth is that all of these characters, they're just supposed to be for fun, and they're not supposed to be linked to any real thing. They're not supposed to, because if you do that, then it does become offensive. That's the trick about it, right? Captain Hook is bumbling and ridiculous. And if he was a real pirate, then that would diminish the darkness of the real pirates, that when they existed and the evils that they did. He's not. That's the point. That's why Peter Pan, a prepubescent, never changing boy, can fight pirates and it's okay. He couldn't do that if they were real pirates. But we've lost that. They're confused. So there you go. New controversy, bringing in actual Native American language and culture into Neverland and therefore tying it into reality versus just the nebulous idea that once was that prevented it from being offensive in the first place. Good grief. Well, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about that notification bell. Drop a comment down below. We care about your thoughts. You matter, and we're listening. And, folks, don't forget that for just the price of a soda, you can see these things right when they come out, right when we're discussing them in those membership live streams. We've got more stuff. We did all kinds of cool stuff in that stream. Had something like 160, 170 people in the audience. It was a great time. So we look forward to doing more of those and growing them. We can't wait to share all of that with you. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
I just found out to get WDW Pro's information, where he gets his sources. I can't believe he uses Wilton!
What?
We got a job to do. It's easy to hack into WDW Pro's computer.
You're kidding me. That's awesome. You know any other stuff?
Yeah, just Jonas Campbell told me.
Sweet.
Said Pro underpaid him or something.
A few minutes later.
Oh, awesome. Whatever. All I gotta do is hack into this thing. It's gonna be so easy.
Yeah, this isn't a
Alright,
hack.
grab this picture over here.
Leave it to me.
No, Wilson.
Job done. What?
No, all we had to do was use the picture because he uses face unlock. Now we gotta go to thatparplace.com and sub to him and his team on YouTube.
Oh, well, I already did that because I'm smart.